Very stupid thing. It's really weird doing it on a laptop. Everything's so small, man. Can you see this stuff on my screen, like the participants box and shit like that, or can you just see the trading view link? You can see the chat box and that. It's annoying, isn't it? Why doesn't it just share the trading view link? Oh, just the chart. Good. Okay. Whoever wrote yes, can you delete that? Thank you. Cool. Perfect. That's good. Good. Okay, how many people have we got? 21 so far, 23. So, all right. So yeah. Entries, right? Entries are like, right. So what do we start? We start with a bit of entry theory, right? So the reason I always say entry should be the easy part is because everything else should like be in line, right? Everything else should be like, okay, this is in my favor, this is in my favor, this is in my favor, click the button, right? Like essentially we trade a couple of different types. Well, we trade a couple of different setups, like to do with higher time frame narrative, right? So, well, maybe 3, 4, I don't know. I haven't really ever figured it out. But what we're really looking at, right, is say this is 15M structure, right? So we're expecting a higher low, right? So there's a few different trades that we take, right? We try to catch the higher low, right here. So this is always my favorite trade personally, right? Because it gets you in best position. It's the highest RR. You don't necessarily have to worry about, your positioning in the trade where specials, they're, if you get in them well, they're pretty stress-free trades, right? You also tend to get the biggest impulses away from them, right? The next trade we take is the reversal up here, right? Always the lowest probability trades, basically, because you're always trading against structure, not always against order flow, but you can be trading against order flow as well. They can give great RR. They, like anything where you're getting in at a structural point, like a higher high or a higher low, or the reverse for bearish, are going to give you the best overall RR because you're best positioned in the trade, right? Then there's like counter trend continuations that we would take down here. Definitely not my favorite trades, just because you're against everything. You don't know where this is going to turn around, all of that sort of stuff. And then there's like pro trend, pro order flow, right? Again, these are very good don't need that much for these trades because you already have all the confirmation like from down here, right? From the price action down here, right? So yeah, if we categorize things that, we can then sort of start working on alignment and stuff like this, right? Like what do we need to see where, right? So if we take this trade, I mean, this trade is my personal favorite trade, right? So let's go and have a look at an example of one of these, right? So that would be, what do we actually have an example? I categorize these here. This would be an example of this, right? We are attempting here, like what we can see in the market at this point in time, right, is a lower high form. Right, because I've had a very structure here. We've seen a corrective retrace, all of that sort of stuff, right? So at this point, we're building a pretty strong narrative for this trade, right? So let's go and look at this. Okay. So at this point in time, right, and like this is where like the multi-time frame aspect comes into it so much, right? Because we have to realize what's going on here, right? So we have bearish 15M structure, right? We take out this low, we would classify that as a swing low, that's a break of it, right? So now we're expecting some form of complex pullback, which we get, right? And then so here we're seeing like internal bullish order flow, right? It's important to understand that we're not seeing true bullish order flow because we don't break anything to the left, right? So here, there's no 1M entry here, right? Here, I'd still want to see, because we're seeing this internal order flow, right? I'd want to see a 1M entry, not just trade seconds from up here, because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen right here, right? This is a hard catch, right? You can trade it, yeah, but they're tricky trades to catch. You will take losses getting into them, all of that sort of stuff, right? So better here to wait for like 15M or, well, 1M to come in line with us, right? In this case, the 1M low is in the same place as 15M, right? Pretty simple, right? So cool, we see this change of character, right? So if we go back to our diagram, right, now we have up here, let's put that up there, right, on another time frame. Well, this is on 15M as well, but yeah, it's the 1M change of character, so it's still just as valid, right? So what we see is 1M come up, right, and realign, right? So now what do we have? Well, in this case, we have 15M bearish structure and we have 15M bearish order, right? But we can say it's 1 bearish order flow as well. But now what happens, right, to get back there? Well, 1M is going to need to go bullish, right? Because we're going to have to take out something like this high, you know, like various highs in here, right? And we can look at this and say, all right, well, we've got like, you know, one good place to look if we've got this is just the EQ of that wick, right? And we can look above there for sort of LTF refinements. What do we find? Let's have a look, see if we can make it like one candle. If not, then we will have to work with what we've got. So again, we've got this unmitigated wick up here, right? So yeah, I'd have like two zones, this one and this one, right? But at this point in time, what we're waiting for, right, is supply, right? We can take this like whole range into consideration here, right? So at this point in time, what we're waiting for, right, because 1M is going to have to go bullish, right? So we need to wait for 1M to realign, right? And this is, you know, like we do obviously take trades that aren't the same as this, right? But this is the high probability shit, right? This is not being creative with entries. This is like following exactly what you should be doing, right? So cool, we see price here continue on up, blah, 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 comes down, forms liquidity, right? And now it's important to understand how this is setting up, right? So what's the previous events that we have seen, right? So we've seen a huge run on liquidity here, right? We've seen this liquidity taken out, right? So now what do we need? Well, we need a point of liquidity to target, right? And this, like, again, you see how I'm building like the whole story here, right? This is all one big fucking entry model, basically, right? Like, it's like once you get all this stuff down, everything else starts becoming easier, right? So price continues down. I mean, there's a nice trade in here as well for sure, but we're just going to focus on like the really, really good shit at the moment. Right, price continues, right? So what have we done here? Right, well, cool. We've generated another point of liquidity, right? And we've generated liquidity here that we can run into the entry, right? So we've got essentially this whole same setup again, right? So here, if 1M realigns, right, from a liquidity grab, that has broken structure, right, and realigned order flow and taken liquidity, and then we have a point of liquidity to target. If 1M realigns, then we're all good to go, right? But obviously it has to realign correctly as well, right? So cool, price continues driving in, right? And this is why, like here, I would always say wait for 1M to realign, because we don't know, like this 15M high hasn't broken swing structure, right? So we don't know at the moment, right? So cool, now we see 1M realign, but has it realigned well? Not really, right? If you look at like the way this price is presented, there's no real like SD flip. There's like, I mean, yeah, you can call this one, but it's a bit shit, isn't it? Like there's no, it's just one wick down rejection straight down, right? Yeah, that's the change of character, mate. But like, it's not formed correctly, right? We have run this liquidity yet. We haven't really built anything here that we've run like instantly, right? And we've come down and we formed these little equal lows here. I think we continue down a little bit lower than this, right? But we can just continue to play price through. Okay, cool. Again, we see a drive down, right? All right, but do we really form a lower high at this point? Well, no, we reject the low, right? We come into this demand, right? And we fail to close below this low. Yes, we have this again. Is it an SD flip? Yeah, it is. Is there inducement? Is there? No, not really. So we could sort of look at this and go, all right, maybe you can look at this on the very low time frames and see what happens here, right? But again, here I'd be thinking I want to see something clean, right? Cool, price pushes up, yeah, and it gives us nothing, right? Absolutely nothing, right? So cool, we don't get an entry there. Now we have to zoom out and go, okay, what's happened? Well, 1M has changed character again, right? So here we get that change of character back up, right? So now 1M is bullish, right? Again, what do we need to see? We need to see 1M go bearish, right? Okay, cool. Price drives higher into the refined POI. Perfect, right? And notice what we've done now, right? Now we have formed relative equal highs here, right, that we've taken out. So what are we starting to see? Right now, we start to see that edging model, right? Liquidation, mitigation, right? Start of a V-shaped recovery, right? And now we start to see this drive down, right? Okay, here, price doesn't like you could in theory get in here because you have this little change of character, right? And a flip. So now the entry model is complete, right? We've seen a liquidation, a mitigation, a flip, and a change of character, and a V-shaped recovery, right? We have a point of liquidity, like we have points of liquidity down here we can target, right? Initially, along with like this low here, all of that sort of stuff, right? But price doesn't come back to fill this. So, okay, cool. Now what have we got? Well, here we've got this, right? This is never mitigated, right? So we can look at this and this, right? But now if we're thinking about this whole story now, right, what have we got? Well, now we've got 15M bearish structure, 15M bearish order flow, 1M bearish structure and order flow. Like we more work, we don't really work with structure so much on 1M, right? But cool, right? So price now comes back up, right? And here, this is now the time we want to be on seconds going, cool, what happens up here? Right? So let's wait and see. Okay, price comes in. Right, gives us a flip and a chotch here. But again, if you're just looking at this, right, it doesn't look correct. You see how this is so like flat? You don't want to be getting in on here because this is probably just going to be liquidity. So in theory, you could look at this high here, right, and maybe take another seconds entry off there. But it's just noticing here, especially with that impulse up, right? You see how that's just come into this little demand range here, right, and popped. Does that now look like a good place to what is that high strong or weak at the moment? It's weak, right? It hasn't broken swing structure. It hasn't done anything, right? We don't want to trade from weak highs, right? We want to trade either after a run on a weak high or from a strong high, right? So cool. Again, we can look at that. We get no reaction. Perfect. No worries at all. Right. Okay. Now what happens? Okay, cool. Now we see price delivering. right? And now you see how much more developed this range is already, right? Like you see how this is like pushing, they're just stacking, stacking, stacking again. They run equal highs here, right? So now we have a liquidation, right? We have like another mitigation, right? Start of a V-shaped recovery. What happens here? Is that break the low? That breaks the low there, right? So now we have that change of character again, right? We have like all of this liquidity here. We can target again, right? And yeah, so we can just get in here basically. As soon as it comes back into this whole range, really, right? Depending on where you can get your start. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to take that there like that, personally. Right? Price fucks up. Never to be seen again. Right? But you see how long this trade took to set up, right? This trade initially started setting up at what that first run on the high was. Oh, we can use that time thing, can't we? Stop being fucking useless. Okay, so this trade from thingy to entry took 7 hours, 40 minutes to set up. Right? That's a lot of patience. You know, but this trade then, right, if you're looking to take out, you know, this low down here to a relevant demand level below it, right, which would make sense. Like there's other points you can try, and there's like a nice demand that we can get. Right, that trades 1 to 55. Right? But do you see how we built that whole entry model, right? So initially we get 15M bearish structure, right? Then we get some form of 15M bullish order flow. We get a 15M 1M realignment, right? Then we get the slow retrace, generating liquidity both sides that we can take into it, right? Then we get a full 1M realignment up here. This is all a bit messy, so we don't want to trade this. We can look at this, but just don't rush into it, right? Then we get a full 1M realignment. Then we get a seconds realignment. So we have 15M bearish structure, 15M bearish order flow, 1M bearish structure, 1M bearish order flow. Then we get seconds time frame bearish structure, bearish order flow. Right. So everything's in our favor. Right. So cool. Right. Right. Where did I put that? Right. So that's trade number 1. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Good. Right. So now we can look at trade number 2. Right. Let's take these continuations here. Right. The pro trend continuations. Right. Yeah. Another one that I like. I'm not the best at taking these. I'm much better at these and these, but these are very, very high probability. Like these are very, very good trades. Right. They're just, I find them a little bit hard to spot for some reason, but that's me. Right. A great example is over. Actually, there was a trade someone asked about the other day. All of like essentially all of these blue ones are these pro trend continuations, right? Like down even down here, right? This is another beautiful one, but let's do this one here, right? This is stunner of a trade, really. Like when you look at it, right? So, okay, again, let's work top down, right? And we'll see what we're working with. Okay, so okay, we can see that we have, let's delete all this shit. Okay, so we can see that we have bullish structure above this high. Is that high correct? Looks it. Yeah. Right, so we can see we have bullish structure, right? We get another break of a high here, so we have more bullish structure over here. right? Then we get a break of this high, right? And it's important to realize that this, although it looks a bit weird, right? This is a higher low. Right, it's everything classified small can 15 right, temporary structure. Right. Also important to notice at this point that what is order flow doing? Well, order flow is bullish as well. Right, we're seeing all of these little ranges created and respected. Right, so right now, basically on 15M, we have something like this along with thingy, right? Along with bullish order flow within these legs, right? So we can look for areas to trade from, right? Again, we've got the buy to sell wicks. We also have this down here, which is why, you know, we always wait for confirmation because we don't, like, if this gets broken, this goes bearish, right? So this is where you need to say, well, fuck liquidity, right? Everything structurally is in my favor, right? So I don't need to see the best liquidity setups at the moment, right? I have more things in my favor. Cool. So now we can go down and we can, you know, do our job of refining this area, right? Because here we can trade seconds, right? Because we have everything in our favor, right? We're trading with 15M order flow and structure, right? So there's our refined area, right? Again, the area is formed reasonably well. It's run liquidity. You know, we do have some build up of liquidity here, but you know, hey ho, structurally, this is a strong low. So yeah. Then cool. What do we see? Yeah, we can look at all of these areas, mate. But like at the end of the day, this is the high probability area because this is the one that breaks structure, right? It's a doji, everything's aligned. Right now, we're not fighting anything, right? So price is likely to respect the very last range, right? So we're seeing this and this, right? Like we're seeing this to this, right? That's basically what we've seen here. So it's likely to respect the thing that broken structure because everything is aligned, right? That's the key thing here. Right. Yeah, 100%. We can mark these out as well. But yeah, this one for me, yeah, like it's always going to be worth looking at. Right. And that's the thing. It's why we use confirmations because, you know, we expect price to do something, but we're not going to act on that until we see it confirm that it's going to do that thing. Right. So here, again, we see some form of 1M bearish order flow. Right. But we don't even see 1M bearish structure. Right, like we wouldn't classify this as like a higher low on one, right? So we're still bullish, right? Again, here I would be happy to go down onto the seconds and say, all right, well, what's happening over here? Okay, well, I want to see a second shot. So there's my last supply range, basically. Right, so sorry, the puppy's just yawning. But yeah, so here, right, we see that's our high, right? That's, well, reasonably here is what we could expect to go. That's the very last, like that's the first change of character, right? So cool, let's see what price does on the way up there, right? Okay, we get interaction, right? We've had a run on liquidity, right? So we've had liquidation, we've had mitigation. You could have maybe got down in here somewhere if you were being super aggressive. There's a little touch there and some form of flip. Yeah, I'd probably be happier to look at this personally. But yeah, no, there's an entry down here. But yeah, cool. Now price. Okay, so cool. Now we form this range, right? We haven't given a change of character yet. Okay, we reject it again. We reject the high. Okay, now we pop, right? So now where are we looking at? Well, again, we find the things that you know, range that breaks structure here, which would be reasonably this little wiki candle here, but something, yeah, something within that, right? So that's demand. Yeah. So now, right, again, what have we got in alignment? We have 15M bullish structure, order flow, right? I think on 1M that looks like it'd be some form of supply on 1M. big enough. Yeah, like you could to a degree classify that as some form of supply on one end, right? But seconds here, the PA is really nice again. This little area runs liquidity, right? So cool. We can just get in anywhere here where we can get reasonably a 1 pip stop below. Essentially, this range is our area of invalidation here, right? This little candle here is the one that broke the high. So as long as we can cover that, we're all good, right? Cool. There we go. Risk is probably off by that point, right? Yeah. And then you can just wait for price to do its thing. Reasonably, this high is weak, right? You can take partials somewhere else. You can say, okay, well, we have seen some form of bearish order flow, so we could take some partials here, maybe look for a hedge, something like that, right? Just in case. But yeah, price eventually continues on its merry way, right? Does that make sense to everyone again? On the latest 15M structure you marked. Wait, what, sorry? On the latest 15M structure you marked, we don't get 2 candles that trade below previous ones. Is that okay in some situation if this pip count is sufficient? What? Here? This one? Yeah, we get this one and this one trades low, right? It's two candle pullback. 1, 2. Yeah. Make sense? Structure. Yeah, cool. No, never. Why would I? That's no point, mate. Like, if your trade is correct and it's going to win, it like price won't. I haven't done less for a while, man. But to be honest, when the money you're managing starts to get a little bit larger, smaller than 1 pip stops are, yeah, a bit freaky, mate. Like, you get slipped hard, like hard. Yeah, it's not something I would recommend, mate. But yeah. Cool. Okay, so now, right, we can look so we got these 2 trades, right? We got a pro trend continuation and more of like a pro trend LTF reversal type thing, right? Okay, so now we can look at trades like this, catching the pullbacks, right, at the top, right, which are one of the trickier trades to catch, right? Because you're against stuff, like automatically you have a lot less in your favor, right? Because you're trading against everything. You're trading against all the momentum in the market and all of that sort of stuff, right? Yeah, like, so where are we? Okay. So yeah, like generally these trades are going to be best after a large run on liquidity. Where's there going to be a large pool of liquidity? Well, up here, right? So this is really the only time we want to be trading like against everything, right? Let's move this on to 4 hours so it goes a little bit quicker. Right there, you can see how well that works, right? So here, right, is one of the rare cases, right? And as it's probably like, I know a bunch of us took this trade, right? But again, if we're looking at this on one end, we don't really get the nicest one end price action here, you know, like it's all a bit scruffy and a bit messy. Do you know what I mean? It's not, sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, it's all a bit scruffy and a bit messy and doesn't make the most amount of sense, right? So like here, again, like just looking at the PA, right? Do you want to get involved in this? Like, why would you want to get involved in this? This Sorry, I caught this trade like up here, right? But I wouldn't want to get involved in anything down here. Just the way all the price is forming and shit, it just looks like it's getting ready to do something like this, right? So cool. Now we run that daily high, right? We do mitigate something. It's like random 15 MPOI, right? But cool. Now what do we see? Okay, well, initially we see a change of character with a flip, right? So we've seen that first bit of confirmation. Now, remember, we're trading against everything right now, right? Like we've got 4H order flows against us, 15M structures against us, 15M order flows against us. So although we can look in here to take the trade, right? Not necessarily ever going to be the safest, right? Better to wait for this, right? So what do we see now? Well, now we see a lower high, right? Doesn't trade above this. So yeah, it's a lower high, right? So cool. Now we can look within here, right? We have two zones of interest. We have the flip, right? And we have the extreme, right? I'm not sure what's actually in there, right? But yeah, we have this and this, right? Right. So cool. So now is seconds, right? Because we want to confirm these levels. So, okay, cool. We come into this, right? We do give a liquidation, right? We give all this stuff. So you can take this trade, liquidation, right? Mitigation, V-shaped recovery, run on liquidity, flip. There's your entry. Sorry, my puppy's just destroying something. Give me 2 seconds. Fucking dog. Right, so cool, right? Price continues to move off. Right, well, range is a bit, yeah, does all this sort of stuff. But this is important to realize that you have two valid areas here, right? So one could well be here, right? So, but again, look, we have to go bullish to get back here, right? So for me, better potentially to wait for more convincing 1 MPO. Well, no, you could trade this actually. I would guess that's 2M. Yeah, that's pretty clean to be fair, because you get this break here, this creates low high, that gets run. Yeah, as long as you saw seconds realign up there, because you've induced that, right? So if you see seconds realign here, you created liquidity here for the run down later. So you've had a run of liquidity. Right, now what do you see? So again, here is somewhere you could use like a sell stop below here, right? But for me personally, that would be a risky trade just because this doesn't really come into anything on the lower time frames over here, right? It sort of comes into imbalance. So you don't know whether this may drive down into here, then drive back up into like this range here, right? So it's better to see some form of commitment, right? So yeah, that was the level I used, right? We see that nice 3M demand here. Right, but you have to notice, like when you're doing your back testing and stuff like this, right? Actually notice how long these trades take to set up, right? Like this starts forming again. Well, when does it run the high? It runs the high here. Right, this trade again takes 46 minutes, like an hour to set up, right? Like the fact that so many of you are taking L's and all of this sort of stuff, right, is because you're just forcing everything. You go, no, well, it should happen now. It should happen now. It should happen now, right? Doesn't it? Like it will happen when it happens, right? You just have to sit there and be patient, wait until each of the things is ticked off, right? And it's exactly the same thing. Like all you've seen here, right, is a liquidation, a mitigation, a V-shaped recovery, multiple changes of character, right? Here, you know, even here, you know, like, then we see this really nice flip down here, right? Bounces straight off the supply level. Again, we have areas up here that we need to worry about, right? So we can just wait here for another lower time frame, right? And this is exactly why we use the seconds, right? Because we have all of these areas to worry about. So let's see which one commits, right? Okay, cool. We get a tap in there. There you go, right? Change of character, some form of flip here. There's your entry. Right, and off we go. Right, so we're taking a break even, a valid break even, getting into that. Price does that. All right, I mean, that did 1 to 100 in not a lot of time at all. But yeah, do you see how you've got like the important thing here, right, is to realize that yes, you can catch trades, you know, like up here, stuff like that. You could, in theory, catch the top of that on the second if you want to, right? I do from time to time, I do, right? Like, but that's when I'm being more creative and more intuitive with price, right? Or with my trading. If you're waiting for the best stuff, it takes time to set up, right? Like, it really, and I mean, like, look, those, what have we done? 3 trades there. I mean, what that trade did, 1 to 100. Trade over here, reasonably, you could target high, like your final TP on it, something like that. So that does 1 to 122. And this one does, you know, that comes, you could target something in here, 1 to 74. Right? Like, that's over the course. So you've taken 3% risk there, right? Because you've waited, and that's over the course of what, a week, maybe just over a week, 5 days, right? And that's including the weekend. So 3 trading days, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Do you do, like, be fucking patient. Like, if you're struggling, don't try and do what you see people like Joe doing, what you see me doing, what you see Lewis doing from time to time when he's not getting thrown up on at the moment, you know? Like, wait for the good shit, right? If you're taking lots of L's, stop fucking taking so many trades. Wait until you have all of this shit ticked off and then execute, right? There's 300 odd R, right? Over the course of 4 trading days or something like that. Sorry, 2 seconds. But yeah, and they're all the same type of trades, right? You can use 1 pip with FTMO. There's a bit, I think I pinned it in resources somewhere, that Jimbo wrote up about the math of it, or no, how to do it with a trade copier. But yeah, even with a 1.5 pip SR, it doesn't fucking matter, man. Like, that trade, this trade here, right? Say you do that 1 to 1.5 pip stop, right? Being safe. It's still what, a 1 to 82, you know? Like, not exactly bad, is it? You know, the only thing is like the advantage using a 1 pip is you don't have to take so much volume of your trade off so early, right? Like, a 1 pip stop lets you take 20% off, where with a 1.5 pip stop, I think you have to take 27 or 1.3 pip stop, 27, something like that. You know, just work out the maths, like figure out how much it is to get 1% or enough to cover your risk. I mean, comms on FTMO aren't even that bad. $3 a round trip or something like that. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, don't use an NSL. That's it. 26% at 5 pips. There you go. Yeah, but yeah, do you see how important it is to wait for these things to set up though, right? Like I guarantee you that is, if you're struggling with anything, right, it's because you're rushing things and you're trying to get into too many trades and you're thinking the trade is going to go without you and you're thinking about catching a 1 to 5, a 1 to 10, a 1 to fucking 15, something like that, right? If you're waiting for the big boy moves, right, like it takes time to set up. Like it really takes time, you know, like this trade here. I mean, this is a really quick setup, right? And this initially from the break of structure still took 45 minutes to set up, right? Like, yeah, this one here took, again, the same, like initially after the break of structure, which you could say here, right, took 45 minutes to set up. This one took 7 hours to set up, right? Patience in the waiting game. Don't sit at your screens. Literally don't sit at your screens, right? What was the structural idea on these last two shorts? Well, this one was a pullback, right? So we run liquidity above it, so we can expect a pullback, right? And this one is expecting a lower high because we're bearish. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm trying to be better these days. I mean, I think you probably will notice I haven't actually taken, what did I take last week? Winning trades I took. Last week I took a long here. I took a short here. Took this. Took this here, which was, yeah, a little bit ropey, but whatever, it worked. This short here, and this short here, and I took a long, like late New York up to the something like that. But yeah, yeah, like literally leave your charts. Can you talk about recognizing daily highs and lows, and well, just look on the daily and weekly charts. Like, there's a high on daily. Right. Yeah, I'd like, that's like, here's a daily high, here's a daily high, here's a daily high, here's a daily high. They're not like swing highs, but they're daily highs, right? When you get runs on them, you get good reactions normally. But yeah, just, yeah, they're weekly highs, you know, here's a weekly low. Like, one thing we may do here is run this into this and then get a big reaction to this previous like weekly low here. But yeah, it's just that sort of stuff. Yeah, so the structural ideas we have, what are they? So continuation, right? So seeing, you know, like the few structural ideas we have are, we are catching a higher low here. So we're taking a trade here, right? We're taking a continuation to run the week high, or we're trading a reversal from the top, like for a pullback, basically. Any plans on the session suit? Okay, source coming out. I'll speak to him more about it this week, Nick. Central, that's all covered in the thingy, mate. Like, if you go through the content, it's liquidation, mitigation, flip and a change of character, and ideally a V-shaped recovery. Yeah, it's about it, really. It's all like, if you go over the entries videos, anything like that, or the entries in the PDF, yeah. But yeah, it's all like the more important stuff with entries, right? Like, the reason I always say they're the easy bit is because I'm looking at it like the entry is literally the point that you click buy and sell, right? You've built all this confluence before, right? So the entry is just going, okay, like I don't really look at it as an entry model, right? Like this is all compliments, right? This happening, something, you know, like that, that's your entry, right? You should be able to build the story up to that point. You've had a run on liquidity, you've had an SD flip, that SD flip has run liquidity, you come back, you get a retest. This is the extreme because yeah, this broke the high. Bosh, off you go. Right, but that can happen across like multiple timeframes, and you might be waiting for like a lower time frame thing here, right? But the important thing is to really like the really important thing about entries is alignment, right? What time frames do you have aligned with you at that point in time, right? Like here, right? So say we broke a little high, a little low back here, right? We would have bearish order flow down here, right? So we don't have 15M aligned with us, right? When we get, and this is the other important thing, right? When we get a 15M change of character, we are going to get a 15M pullback, right? When we get a 1M change of character, we are going to get a 1M pullback. When we get a second change of character, we're going to get a seconds pullback. When we get a 4H change of character, we're going to get a 4H pullback, right? So it's important to work with timeframes like that, right? So here we get the change of character. So we wait for 15M to realign, right? 15M realigns with change of character. Now, ideally, we want to wait for 1M, right? Down here. And then we want to wait for seconds to do the same thing, right? And then we have 15M in alignment, 1M in alignment, seconds in alignment, right? Like here, right, we're trading against everything, but here we get 1M maybe come into alignment. We see a lower high, right? So then we can trade that next lower high, right? And here we would want to see seconds come into alignment, right? Here, right, this trade here, for instance, right, we have 15M in alignment. We just need to see 1M or seconds come back into alignment down, right, this trade here. Right, it's why I can get trades like this without taking too many hits on them, right? Because yeah, they may fucking, most of the time they don't work, because you're trying to reverse a fucking multi-trillion-dollar pound trend or dollar a month trend or whatever, right? But yeah. Yeah, does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, helps out with entries and shit, like what we should be looking for. No, I don't believe that flip should sweep some liquidity, mate, personally, but yeah, that's me. Would you wait for a break of 15M structure? Yeah, in theory you should. I do it without, but yeah, I'm done. But yeah, like in theory, yes. Like you should always, until like say like here's a perfect example, right? If we look at this, right, here is a great example of like just price continuing, right? We just get these continuous, oh, it's a little bit later than this, hold on, let's go for it. Oh no, it's right here until we get a proper break of 15M structure. You do it on what, mate? What's COC? It's roots maneuver, actually. But yeah, days where we trying to, yeah, yeah, it's just stupid, mate, really. But yeah, here you see like all that is bearish structure, bearish structure, bearish structure, bearish structure until you get a break above that. No, and even I can't some days, mate. Yeah, until we get a break of bearish structure at some point, a bullish structure, right, which we still don't get even here, right? Price continues to melt, just continues to melt, continues to follow lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. It's all it's doing. It's continually creating lower highs, right? Now here we get a break, right? And then we get a decent pullback, right? It's like 100 pips or something like that. You know, it's a decent pullback. Yeah, exactly, because we're not following structure like we should. And then, yeah, then you get the continuation of the 4H high because, yeah, 4H hasn't gone bullish. Yeah, here you can look for, that's a bit of a weird bit of price action, that, but yeah. Yeah, then you start getting, where'd you get more reversal structure? Yeah, there you can look for longs as well. 30 pips or something, I guess. Then where is it? Yeah, then we get this big drive down. Then we get proper bullish structure over here, right? Then we get, yeah, proper bullish structure. Then price continues up from higher lows and we get another good pullback. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, does that make sense? Right? It's all just about like knowing what you've got aligned with yourself. Don't try and fight everything. Just wait. Like, honestly, if you're struggling, right? Wait. Like, just be fucking patient. Wait, like, have a little checklist of what do I have with, do I have 15M structure? Do I have 15M order flow? Do I have 1M structure? Do I have 1M order flow? Like, all of that sort of stuff. Just have a little checklist and do not fucking take a trade until it's all in line with you, right? And your strike rate will go up massively, your RR will go up massively, your confidence will go up massively, right? Just don't sit at the chart staring all day, you know, like backtest, do something useful. You know, go for a walk, get out in the big wide world, right? But yeah, cool. I'm building a trade plan. Was there a mention of that? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't really have a trade plan anymore. I just follow those flowcharts, right? Well, to a degree. But yeah, we can try and do that. I like a trade plan should really be a personal document as well, you know. Yeah, like, yeah, exactly. Like the thing is, you know, like I'm teaching you all to see the market how I see it, right? Where we're not always all going to see it exactly the same way. Like, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like you might just want to trade pro trend trades. You might just want to trade pullback trades. You might just want to trade, you know, you might figure out one setup that you're really good at and just want to trade that. Like, yeah, I mean, how did I used to have? So I used to have my trade plan. Before, like, this is why I sort of went to flowcharts. So my trade plan was this whole fucking complicated thing, right? Still useful to have, but yeah, like it's very long. And yeah, like I didn't really love it that much personally. But yeah. Yeah, does that make sense to everyone then? All good? Like we'll continue to go over entries and stuff. Yeah, we'll do some more in-depth stuff, but you see how rarely it, like I actually get on the seconds, right? Like, yeah, just be patient with stuff. Don't force it, right? As Mr. Craig White Gift says, trading's like farting. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. All right. So yes, cool. All right, guys. Peace and love. Have a good Sunday. All right. Bye bye.